Wow. Where's Alice? There she is. Hi, everybody. It's been a great afternoon. I am so fortunate to be able to have done this for the last 2 years. This is my 3rd year introducing these incredible feisty women. Some of the smartest, feistiest women in Cincinnati. Of course, last year Bud had to correct me on a couple of things. He always sits in the front in case I make a mistake. But this year I have the privilege of introducing Alice Schneider. She's been a Women's City Club member for 27 years. Now, am I holding this right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know a lot about Alice's former life. I know a lot about what she's done recently, so I'm going to talk a little bit about her former life. Alice had a mother who was incredibly strong, and she taught Alice from the time she was a toddler that women rule the world. Well, Alice grew up in Columbus, and at about the age of 13 or 14, she began to realize, uh-oh, women don't rule the world, and it was kind of devastating for her at that point. But Alice continued on, met her future husband, Chuck, in high school. So they are high school sweethearts. That's pretty special. They used to argue all the time. Alice said, well, discuss women's rights. And Alice, of course, arguing for complete equality, economic, intellectual, social, and personal. She always has and is continuing to champion all of those ideas. While working on her bachelor's at Ohio State, Alice heard Betty Friedan speak, and I think Jane said something like this. She got an autographed copy of Betty's book, and from that point on, there was no doubt about her course in life. She would be a feminist. What better way to spread the word to other young women than to teach? So Alice's goal became teaching. She received her bachelor's at Ohio State, had to marry Chuck, and her first job actually was as a social worker, where she was at Franklin County up in Columbus, where she was evaluating clients for eligibility. So she developed some invaluable interpersonal relationship skills up there, which helped her later on in her teaching career. After a year, Chuck and Alice moved to Cincinnati, where Alice got her master's in education from UC. Her first teaching job was in Butler County when there was nothing but cows in Butler County, I think, because I lived there then too. And she was an elementary teacher there. She and Chuck, now married, had to move to Topeka, Kansas for his job. And I guess that was a bit of an experience. Alice taught at a junior high school in Topeka, Kansas. And at that school she did IEPs, individualized plans for students, and taught special ed students. So that was a whole other group of skills that Alice developed. But a year later, Alice and Chuck decided Topeka, Kansas was not their cup of tea. So they moved back to Cincinnati. Alice was hired by Cincinnati Public Schools, where she developed curriculum for English classes. She taught special ed classes, and she became head of the English department for Cincinnati Public Schools. Alice won Best Teacher Award in 1990 and 95. All right? Yes. 2 years, so that's pretty amazing when you think of the number of teachers in Cincinnati Public Schools. During those years, Alice had 2 children, a son and a daughter, but she always knew, because of that feminist bent, that she wanted to work while she was pregnant, and she wanted to go back to work afterwards. Back then, there were no policies for that. Cincinnati Public Schools had not allowed that, so Alice, with her determination, helped to change that policy, and she did work as long as she could. And after her children were a couple of months old, she went back to work. So Alice, thank you for doing that. Little equality for women. Alice still believes that women's issues, reproductive rights, and equal pay should be at the top of the Women's City priority list, and I think she'll probably mention that when she gives her remarks. It was back in 1985, 86, when Tommy Thompson Birdsall asked her to join Women's City Club. Alice said she thought she was joining a conservative group of women. I don't know where that came from. But she soon found out what a bunch of wonderful, liberal, feminist, strong group we are. Alice's first love is the Women's City Club. She's been involved in that for so many years. She's given so much to the Women's City Club. She has been the president. She was the chair of the national speaker for so many years. She's been on many other committees, and we've worked on quite a few together. And Alice just quietly but feistily gets everything done. She's also been president and very active in other organizations. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the American Association of University Women, Cincinnati Women's Political Caucus, League of Women Voters, and many, many others. Some of her proudest moments, however, are during the 17 years that she volunteered at the drop-in center, running a women's group, Abused Women, and Alice sits there and talks to them, and she's been doing that for 17 years, so I think that's pretty outstanding. She also feels a lot of pride when she champions an issue, giving speeches, writing letters, handing out literature for major issues. One of her feistiest moments was working on the campaign finance issue for Cincinnati, where she collected thousands of signatures and helped conduct the ballot campaign. Alice believes that feisty is as feisty does, and that each of us can make a difference in our society, and we have a duty to do so. I think I'm getting close to my time, so I don't want to take... Am I fine? Okay, as far as a local feisty woman that Alice admires, she said, you know what? There are too many of them. Everybody that's won this award, everybody, in fact, in the Women's City Club, so she couldn't choose one. She did, however, feel that after she saw the movie Iron Jaws, that Alice Paul was one of the historical feisty women that she would definitely honor. In spite of all of these incredibly important accomplishments of Alice, I think one of the feistiest things that she has ever done, and something I admire her for, is the fact that she began running, not for office, running at age 53. Now, how many of us have done that? I mean, Alice asked a friend if she could be, a friend asked her to try a marathon, and Alice said, well, can we walk if we can't run? And the friend said, no, you're going to run, Alice. And run Alice has, just like Forrest Gump. Her first marathon was in 2003. And since 2003, Alice has run marathons in 34 of 50 states. Wow. I mean, that is amazing. And not only that, she usually wins first place, because how many of us run after we're 53 years old, you know? So she has a lot of ribbons. Anyway, in closing, I think Alice will appreciate this little quote I found for the future. I want to be an outrageous old woman who never gets called an old lady. I want to get leaner and meaner and earth-colored till I fade away from pure joy. Alice, thank you for all that you have done and do. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, who was that woman you described?
That was you, my dear.
Thank you very much. That was very fine. I am so humbled by this honor today, but so appreciative because I do like Women's City Club a lot. And I would like to acknowledge my husband, Chuck, who has encouraged me and stood by me, and he calls me the committee lady. But, but as Susan said, Tommy Thompson ages ago asked me to join Women's City Club, and I thought, like she said, I thought I was joining a staid group of women and that I would be bored. How mistaken I was. Women's City Club has enriched my life and stretched me as a person since I've been a member for the many, many years. And because it has done so much for me, I would really like to ensure that other women find out about Women's City Club and profit by it as I have. And of many of the activities that I've been involved with in Women's City Club, I'd just like to give an example of a couple of things that I've done. And it's just two of the many things that women can get involved with and make a difference in Cincinnati. The first one was when I was president, I think back in 1998. City Council was voting on rescinding the campaign finance that they had voted in the previous year. And so, as president, one of my duties was, hey, go down there, Alice, and testify. And I'm like, what? I don't know anything about campaign finance. And I was used to speaking. As a teacher, I knew how to speak, but in front of City Council, So, with my little bit of knowledge, I researched it, I went online. Fortunately, the internet had just started at that time, and I dug into it. And I prepared the speech and went down there, and lo and behold, it turned out quite well. In fact, a couple of people asked me for the speech. But that wasn't the end of it. That was just the beginning, because council did vote to rescind it, and the scuttlebutt was that one council person was promised a lot of money if that person voted against it. So that really fired us up to make some changes. And so we went out, and Women's City Club was involved in this with the League of Women Voters, and Bill Woods, who's sitting back there, led it with Pete Strauss, and they brought together organizations to collect those signatures, thousands of signatures. Now they make it seem so easy, but with volunteers doing it, it was a struggle. And Del Heitkamp and Nancy Minson were involved, and it was so exciting, and Women's City Club was right in there, and we made a difference and passed that campaign finance reform. So instead of the candidates getting, as it was in 1999, getting $25,000 each from one contributor, now it's limited to $1,000, so that there's not that overall influence. And it was just exciting work that I was glad to be a part of with Women's City Club. The other episode is not so shattering, but as you know, we have our national speaker every year, and I just want to remind you, Robin Wright is coming this year. She's an analyst of the Middle East, and you can hear her on the Diane Rehm show. But that particular year, we had Diane Rehm coming in. And she had already, I was on the National Speaker Committee, but Diane Rehm had already had to cancel once because she broke her ankle. And so there was the day of the event, and Mary Wells and I were supposed to pick her up at the airport, and we were very concerned because we'd already, we wanted this to go. So I called the airport to see if her flight was on time so we'd know what time to get out there. I called or checked it online, and what did I find out? It was not only not on time, but it was totally canceled. I was like, oh my goodness, and I had not heard anything from the agent, so I called the agent quickly. This was 10:30 in the morning, and she was due to speak at 7 p.m. that night, flying in from Washington, D.C. And so I called the agent, and he knew nothing about the canceled flight. And we're like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And so he hung up, and we were frantic. Well, here we had 1,000 people going to show up for Diane Rehm at 7 p.m., and she didn't even have a flight into Cincinnati. So about an hour later, he called and he said, okay, we've rescheduled her. She's coming into Indianapolis. We'll have her take a taxi from there to... I said, no. I had visions of the taxi getting lost, and we'd be... So Mary Wells and I hopped in the car and drove to Indianapolis to pick up Diane Rehm. And here we had 2 hours in the car on the way back talking to Diane Rehm. And it was just such a highlight to talk to her.
You had to buy the champagne.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. She said, I've got to have the champagne for my throat. And so we had to arrange for this champagne purchase so she would have champagne for her throat. So these are the exciting things that I have done with Women's City Club that have just been so much fun and so enriching, as well as Women's City Club achieving things for the community. And I hope that we can encourage and tell other women of the next generation that they can make a difference, and not only make a difference, but they can also enrich their lives by doing so. But just one little thing that I want to get in here is we do need to embrace social media to get that next generation. We need to get involved in Facebook, YouTube, Flickr, Twitter, and get on there and get that next group involved with Women's City Club. So It's just a tool. It's not perfect. It's not going to solve everything, but it is going to help. So thank you very much. I really appreciate this honor, and live on, Women's City Club.
Now, Ruth, do you have some closing remarks?